When a new console launches, I can't help but think about my dad. He was there with me for nearly every big system release growing up.
PlayStation? That's the Nintendo 64.
There it is. Whoa. First time in Texas.
And no matter how strong or weak a launch lineup was, he always brought the hype.
You bought a Jaguar now. Oh my God, and it comes with.
But he also had his opinions.
All right, we're gonna take it out for the first time here, slide it out in this terrible design box where it's just plastic with the instructions.
So now that the Nintendo Switch 2 is finally here, I've been thinking a lot about how he would have reacted to it. And while I know he'd appreciate some things, I also know there's a whole list of stuff he would have absolutely hated. This is everything my dad would have hated about the Switch 2 if he were alive today.
I know.
This episode of My Retro Life is made possible by our amazing supporters on Patreon and YouTube memberships. So why don't we take a moment to hear from them about what they hate most about the Nintendo Switch 2. Eric Plunk says, I hate that Nintendo didn't design some sort of interchangeable traditional D-pad for the left Joy-Con. It would be great to be able to play classic titles in handheld mode without having to resort to a Pro controller. Bryce Gamble says, the UI. What I love about new technology is messing around with the new interface, but the Switch 2 just felt like an upgraded Switch. I was hoping there would be some sort of new layout to make it feel different. Thank you once again to our amazing patrons. Now, on to the video. I think the price of the console would have been a bit of a bitter pill to swallow for Dad. The fact that this was a Nintendo console, Nintendo consoles were historically always cheaper and more affordable, and I think Dad would have felt like it was priced too high. I think $400 would have been the sweet spot for him, and being bundled with Mario Kart World, sure, that's nice and everything, but I think he would have been really mad. Like, I'm not even joking, really upset over the fact that the tech demo that you download from the eShop, which basically teaches you how to use your system, and it's really cute and everything, right? You're like shrunk down and you're exploring the hardware and the various mini games that are on it, and it's teaching you how each of the Joy-Cons work and the different functionalities, the mouse controls, and that's all cute and really innovative for a tech demo. But the fact that they're charging for this thing like $10, Dad would have thought this was like such a bad business move and so unfair to the consumers who just spent $500 on this system. And really, I know that this would have upset him so much. He would have been like, are you kidding me? Come on, Nintendo, really? He definitely would have bought it reluctantly, but man, I would have heard a lot of griping. Another thing that would have severely disappointed Dad is the system UI. The fact that the user interface is basically the same as the Nintendo Switch 1, this would have frustrated him to no end because, again, we're left with a system user interface that really is devoid of any of that Nintendo charm that we used to get in some of their earlier consoles. Dad loved the Nintendo Wii's little songs and little sounds that it would make. The user interface there was just so full of charm. There was just something about earlier Nintendo consoles, like the GameCube's user interface and the Wii. Dad loved that Nintendo charm, that sort of ethereal, ambient music, all the different little sounds and bleeps and bloops that would be inside a Nintendo console, Dad loved that. And the fact that the user interface is just so vanilla, they haven't even upgraded or given you the chance to change the themes. We're still stuck with black and white themes. The fact that everything just like carried over and there's really no change to this user interface, Dad would have hated that. And it would have made him feel like, what are we upgrading here? What did I just spend $500 on? This looks and feels so far like the exact same console. And that's not the way Nintendo was in the past. Every console you bought felt like a step forward. It felt like something brand new. I know that the UI would have been a disappointment for him. He would have made fun of Nintendo for not changing it at all, basically. Now let's talk about the launch lineup. Dad would have hated the fact that this console launched with basically only one first-party Nintendo game, and really it's the only game truly you must own on this console at launch. Everything else really has already been released or has been out for a few years on other consoles, and this would not have impressed him at all. If you look back at some of these other consoles that we experienced together, there was a great library of games and new experiences, new adventures that were just changing the way you played games. Games like Panzer Dragoon on the Sega Saturn or Virtua Fighter, they ushered in a brand new era and made you feel like you were taking a step into the next generation. Same thing goes for Super Mario 64. And come on, the Sega Dreamcast. That was a launch that Dad loved, and by far, I think the both of us felt like it was the greatest launch of any video game console ever, with the amount of incredible games that came out for that system, especially for the US launch. Man, Sega hit a home run with this launch. It goes down in the history books. Brand new Sonic Adventure game, House of the Dead 2, Soul Calibur 2, the list goes on and on. And to be fair, Dad did not like the games that were available on the Super Nintendo at first. I mean, he liked the games, Super Mario World, but he did not care for Pilot Wings. He could care less about SimCity on the Super Nintendo, and it took a while for some other games to come out. So this is nothing new for Nintendo. They've had slow rollouts in the past, but I could already hear Dad in my head making fun of the launch library for the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, let's talk about game keycards, because this is one of the things about the Switch 2 that I think Dad would have hated most. Most third-party games are being sold to consumers on these game keycards, which really, I feel like this is the death knell for physical gaming, and that Nintendo is trying to find some sort of happy middle ground between digital and physical gaming. You know, actually tangibly holding the game like we always have all these years. And as collectors, this has meant something to us. It's been special. Digital gaming, though, is our future. But Nintendo is trying to, I think, bridge the gap between old school consumers and new school consumers. With the game key cards, though, I think everybody loses, and Dad would have felt the same way. The fact that basically what they're offering is just a game box with a plastic shell inside. There's no game on the cartridge. You insert it into the Switch 2, and it allows you access to download the game. For Dad, the reason why he would have hated this, and I really thought about this, I was like, yeah, oh my gosh, this is basically the DVD DivX retail format wars. DivX was a form of media that was trying to compete with DVD. The reason it failed is sort of along the same lines as to why people are complaining about game keycards, and Nintendo might be repeating history here. Dad hated DivX.
DivX lets you watch movies at home for about what it costs to rent, but you never have to return movies or pay late fees.
For those of you who don't know what DivX is, I can understand because, man, it failed miserably. DivX was a format that was in competition with DVD. You would buy a DivX movie, and you would put the DivX CD into your DivX player, and you wouldn't be able to actually own the movie until you called DivX and paid them money over the phone to then gain access to your physical media that you bought.
The DivX machine is hooked up to your phone line. For almost all titles, you can purchase unlimited viewing privileges for your players called DivX Silver for a one-time fee.
This was terrible, a horrible idea, and it crashed and burned so bad, and Dad complained so much about DivX. I feel like Dad would have likened this whole thing to DivX. It would have brought back really bad memories of that horrible format, and thus he would have hated the way things are going with the game key cards. And guys, don't even get me started on 60 frames per second gameplay and the fact that media outlets and Nintendo themselves are actually like touting this as like some awesome thing that Switch 2 is going to do. Like all games are going to run 60 frames per second. Like Dad would have scoffed at this. He would have thought that would be ridiculous. Games that ran at 60 frames per second had become a normal thing in the Dreamcast era. And we love the fact that Dreamcast, basically, most of those games ran at 60 frames per second. It became the norm for us. I remember some of the other console launches that we experienced together before he passed away. I remember him being so mad at the fact that some games ran less than 60 frames per second, and he would always compare it to the Dreamcast and be like, what gives? Like with the Dreamcast, we had 60 frames per second all the time. It wasn't a big deal. So any game, like they set the benchmark and we loved it. But the fact that, you know, they're making a big deal about Switch 2 having 60 frames per second, like that would have been ridiculous to him, because in his eyes, all games back from 1999 and beyond should have been 60 frames per second. Like that was a must. But the thing I think he would have hated the most about the Nintendo Switch 2 is just the fact that it's not really innovating. It's not really pushing or changing how we play video games. Because I remember that was what really blew him away about new consoles back in the day. It's what really just made his eyes light up. The fact that we would buy a new hardware, a new console, we'd spend tons of money on it, and it was this event. And we would plug that thing into our home stereo and our home theater system and experience something we'd never experienced before.
This is all made as a game. It's not a cinema. You're looking at Dreamcast game.
Look at the little guy run.
That's the thing, guys. Nintendo Switch 2 is really not bringing us into a world that we've never experienced before. I mean, even the game that is selling the console right now, you know, the pack-in game Mario Kart World, that's nothing new. It's just more Mario Kart. There's nothing really groundbreaking about this console launch at all, really. And I really feel like Dad would have just really hammered this console for not innovating, for not changing how we play games. And, you know, he wasn't even really a big Mario Kart fan. I mean, you know, he probably would have watched me play it quite a bit, and I would have really enjoyed it. And that's the thing, you know? You do it for your kids. He would have done it for me. And that's why I did it for Hallie.
The Switch. You take it from Mr. Jeff.
You know, I think I would have wanted to get a Switch 2 at launch, but I really wanted to get it for her. I wanted her to be able to experience it like I did with console launches back in the day. I wanted her eyes to light up and for us to experience and play these games together when they were new, when they were in the headlines, when it was brand new, and it was a new experience.
This is the best day of my life.
Oh my gosh. I'm so happy to hear that.
Really, that's all that really matters at the end of the day, guys, is that Nintendo is still making people smile. They're still making games that just bring joy to your world, happiness to your day. And we might all have our misgivings or feel negative about console launches, but it's only because we've built it up so much in our head, and we have so much history with these games and these launches that we have so much to compare it to. But you got to think about the kids. You got to think about our kids these days. They don't have anything to compare it to. They just have what's a brand new Nintendo machine. They just see new Mario Kart or new Donkey Kong, and they get excited. That's all that really matters. Their excitement. And Hallie, I'd never seen her so excited for anything video game related. Honestly, that launch, that midnight launch that we went to and we got the Switch 2, I just saw her eyes light up like mine used to, and it was one of the greatest nights. It really was.
This is the best day of my life.
Oh my gosh.
I'm really done complaining about the Switch 2, and I'm ready to make some memories. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Nintendo Switch 2. Did you guys pick one up? What do you think of the console? It's been about 3 weeks now. Definitely want to know what your thoughts are on this brand new Nintendo machine. And I hope you enjoyed my breakdown of what I think my dad would have thought about this console if he were still with us today to experience it with us. If this is your first time to the channel, do consider subscribing. I love talking about my game crazy family and all of the amazing adventures we had with video games, so many of which were caught on tape by Dad. And if you didn't hear the news, we are officially full-time with My Retro Life. That's right, I recently made the leap and we went full-time. But it was all thanks to the incredible love and support that you guys have shown us over on Patreon and YouTube memberships. Seriously, you guys made this happen. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I can't wait to show you what's next for My Retro Life. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you next time.